Recording in progress. Recording progress. Recording.
Here you go. Somebody want to call this thing to order? Tom?
Okay, we'll call it to order at 8:02.
8:02. Okay. Director Fayram?
Here.
Vice President Palmer?
Here.
Nobody absent.
Should we select the chair before we maybe flip 3 and 4?
Could do that.
Do you have any opposition to that?
No.
Just to help move the meeting along?
We'll select everything.
Yes. Would you like to be chair? I'm happy to do it. But I am happy to.
Are you chair of the technical?
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about that one as well, right? Next meeting.
I'm happy.
So
Yeah,
maybe
I'm
I can
happy
help.
to do it.
Okay,
I'm happy
so-
to do it.
Okay.
As long as we're both doing work.
Yeah.
Alright.
Okay.
So, do you need a?
I'll be the vice chair.
Okay.
All right. Well,
We should have a motion.
so I'll nominate Director Palmer as the chair.
And she has a second since you're the committee. All right.
I yield to the chair.
Alright, then we'll move on to public comment.
Nobody online.
See no one online. Consent agenda minutes approval. I'll let you.
So I'll note that I wasn't on the committee for this meeting.
Oh, right.
However, I did look at it. It seems simple enough, and based on what I understand from council, unless Mr. Savage has any thoughts to the otherwise, I looked at it and I'm happy to make a motion to approve the minutes.
I don't know of any other issues, and you can vote on it even though you weren't there. As somebody who was there and took the minutes, I can, at least from my perspective, they fully reflect what happened at that meeting.
Well, given that, I go ahead and move approval of the minutes.
You got it.
I'll second.
We'll still be public comment. Just
What time?
it's consent agenda. You're going to vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to business items, discussion related to the Water Resource Development Act and the amount. Wait, sorry, I'm looking at the minutes, not the.
Yeah, so it's just existing at grants. So, yeah. So we really only have two things going on right now, right? District Engineer Pike noted the other day that the water resources, I forget, WRF, whatever that stands for, that's basically fulfilled, and we should get the $75,000 from that any day now, literally. And then, as I think you both know, the WRDA, Water Resources Development Act grant, has, the bills are approved, but the funding allocation has not been made. So until that funding is done, nothing to do. I've reached out again to congressmen's offices, but there's nothing really to do.
So, is it in the purview of this committee, so if we do get approved, then what? Or is it not worth spending time talking about it? Just since neither one of us have been on the committee.
Yeah, so this group would help, review as we track it, right? And make sure that things are going on, whatever the grant says, that we're meeting the criteria of the grants. Presumably, let's just assume for a second the WRDA grant comes through. There's going to be a lot of conversation, probably this group could be PM, I don't know, about, okay, how do we make it all happen? Because it would be Army Corps being the project manager and just that whole, it's going to be an odd one if it comes through. because it's a planning grant, it's not a construction
Right,
grant.
right. Would the district engineer Pike be involved in that, similar to how he's managed this one, or is that all TBD?
Probably not, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, you certainly could be, particularly if we're gonna go from, 30% to all the way to final design or bid docs from an engineering perspective, which it should cover. But, that kind of drifts into the technical subcommittees, sort of making sure that.
Okay,
Yeah.
this is my.
Yeah, it's kind of an odd one, right?
Well, I think it's something we're gonna have to, deliberate on too, because based on what the meetings that I was in on back with the Corps, we had one meeting with the Corps when we were talking about it, and, I know the process too. I mean, they're really expensive for doing this level of work, and I think, a $4 million grant, we're on the hook for 25% match, that's $1 million. So, so then that either has to come from, that can come from the state, it just has to be non-federal. But I don't know that we'll have $1 million to match, so
Right.
it's,
It's an option, right, we went through this, we're not obligated to exercise it if we
Yeah.
receive it, if we're approved. So so I do think,
so I think we wanna work with the Corps too on the scoping and make sure that, what they come up with the cost is still really important to us because we're responsible for that local piece. And so there's a lot of work that comes through. Now appropriations, we were told would be sometimes towards the end of this year, if that happens. And
well, the other part is, recall, they added the zero.
yeah,
Right, so we don't need a project, we don't need to invent $4 million worth of planning, especially if there's I'm thinking, anyway, it's all academic, so let's not.
yeah. But just to that point, your point is well spot on, is that where I was saying, if or when we get there, we wanna work with the Corps on the scoping, then they're gonna have a consultant off of who they use, and we just need to work with them to get what we need at a price that's within realm. So it is kind of all academic until
Right.
that happens. I'm not optimistic of that happening, given the environment, but we'll see.
If I could add just two things. Because the word of grant was to do two things, right? Environmental and engineering. Right? Those two are what we originally asked for. On the environmental, question was raised the other day, and I've chatted with the council a little bit about it already, is, what if we go to solving, what kind of environmental is really required, and how expensive will it be? So the general consensus between council and myself was, that's probably a lot lighter and easier environmental document than if we do our own local plant, because we won't be installing anything or disturbing anything that hasn't already been disturbed, whereas putting your local plant, you're going to be doing all of that, right? So there's that piece, which means, remember that for a local treatment solution, Padre gave us an estimate of about $125,000. So if it's less than that, now I'll just round it down to 100,000. Let's just say that's 100,000, probably not even that much. On the engineering side, the original estimate was, well, just what we did was we said, let's take the amount that we paid for the 30% design and assume that's the amount to get us to 90% engineering. It's probably less than that, let me be clear, and to that end, I've asked a couple of engineering firms what the costs are to go from 30 to 90. Because I want to have a good budgeting number.
Right.
Where I'm going with this is, if it is those two numbers, you're talking about $400,000 in total.
Right.
So if we're matching and it's 25%, then it's 100,000, 400,000. But given the process, it might not be worth it, right?
Yeah.
It could be, no, you're going to spend more than you know,
Yeah.
so we'll have to, I guess all I'm really getting at is, importantly, I think, the estimates to do the work that we're talking about are critical, I think, in this conversation, because that'll tell us how much we would need to do it locally, right? And then we can have a conversation with the Army Corps about, well, what's their best estimate as far as getting the work done. Make sense? Sorry about all the noise outside. They're
doing their job.
they're doing their job, but it just makes for a noisy video. So anyhow, I pass that along for information. There's not anything more I would, again, until the appropriation comes through, it's kind of doesn't matter. And the other thing is, if it does take till the end of the year, hopefully we'll already be underway, right? We could already be underway with both of those activities before we even hear about whether or not an appropriation is going to be made, because we're not going to wait for them, right?
Right. Okay, so that was discussion on existing grants. Any public comment on discussion of existing grants? Item 7, discussion of the development of a grant.
So if I may, how far to go back? So when Director Kennedy was originally on the board of directors, when the district was first formed, she worked on a spreadsheet that kind of pulled together all of the known set of grants and tried to sort it and do some other things with it. She was working on, before she left the subcommittee, kind of a revision of that. I haven't seen it. But it was an attempt to say, here's all the grants that are currently out there that could, for instance, support planning or support construction. And the plan was basically intended to say, okay, we were trying to get it to where you could say, okay, planning grants for, I'll make it up, but planning grants for environmental work. Here's what's coming down the pike as far as we know. Here's the application dates for such things. Here's the timeline for when that, because you can get a lot of this, particularly off the state's website, right? So she was attempting to pull that into kind of a spreadsheeted document that you could pull up and say, okay, when we get to construction, here's the ones we need to be going after. And oh, by the way, we should be talking to the state now because that's not for a year, but we need to be in their pipeline. So that's what she was attempting to do, and what this grant plan, as we were calling it, was all about.
So can you ask for, because I was going to ask for what documentation we have from previous, if you guys have been working on this, so that would be helpful, even if it's the last version that you hasn't updated.
Yeah, I can certainly do that.
The other thing I was thinking, especially after the meeting the other night, is especially once you have a project description, is talking to the water board about, helping us with advocacy and helping us identify and advocate for the grants. Because we may want to do like a all hand with the water board, the county, their lobbyists, our federal and our state reps do a with everybody on the same call and the same random focus and help us jumpstart this one, especially again, when we have problems. So I think we're gonna be, right, markups, federal is next month for this year, it'll be an interesting year. So anyway, I think we need to look at the resources in government who are vested in our success and want to help us succeed and see how we leverage that as well. But do our homework and come up with our own explanation. And see what else there is or how we can harness those resources to help us apply and obtain. And maybe you guys have talked about that before. But
Well, I think that, look, we need to recircle and redouble our effort now at the state level, which I think probably has the most likely source for grants, and so that would be meeting with, I met with Assemblyman Hart, I don't know, it was like a couple months ago. And, I have not had any contact with Senator Ramon's office. We should probably do that. And then I really like your idea, especially when we get a project description, talk to the water board, and I think what we need to ask them is, so where are the grant opportunities right now? Because I don't know where they are, and hopefully they know more, and then if not, we go back to the Ramon path of trying to get an appropriation level of some kind for us, where,
Right.
It's just an appropriation, and how that looks and how we get it and what the cost sharing is, I guess up to that discussion. Clearly, there will be cost sharing, but,
Well, I think the county has the best interest in helping us succeed here too, right? So,
I just haven't seen the county offload grant money like that to another agency in the past.
I was thinking about the more advocating for the appropriation to us, because what's our problem is their problem.
Yeah, and actually that kind of sparks thought in that we used to call it the Senator Jackson money that EHS had, right? And that's what funded some of the stuff that we've done. How did that happen? Like, how did the county get that money and then they sub-granted it to us? That might be a model that we follow as well, where the state gives the county, or the county, I guess it's us. I'm not familiar with how that worked.
So, yeah, I think timing will be when we have something real, right, to have discussions with them. I mean, you tell me, we've got to have a project description, it's like, okay, here's what we as a district or community have decided we're going to pursue, then it makes it real.
And here's the cost, yeah.
Sit down, we've got real, real, right now, it's got to get out of that.
So if I may, it's now been a year and a half, almost 2 years, I think, since I had this conversation, but, every year the state does kind of a funding fair. It was, I want to say it was in November, don't quote me on that, but it feels like it was November of last year. And they do it every November, or whatever the timeline is, October, November, when it is. Point being that both Director Kennedy and they do it the same presentation twice, it's online, I can send you the link to it. But 2 years ago when they did it, one of the things they were talking about was, back to your comment, this whole conversation around a project description, because once you have a project description, they will assign, the state water board folks will assign you a project manager to help you on the back end to kind of say, okay, now I'm responsible loosely, if I hear of a grant related to what Los Olivos is doing, to make sure that Los Olivos is at least paying. So you've got somebody up there who is aware of and is your, in quotes, your project manager on this sort of stuff. When I talked to them 2 years ago, they said, so what's your project? And I said, well, we're still debating between this and that and this and that. She said, I'm not sure I can help you just yet, other than for planning grants, to help you get through some of that process. And I said, well, what's available right now? She said, well, you guys aren't a disadvantaged community, so not a lot. But if I hear of anything, I'll let you know, and I never heard from her. So it doesn't mean there aren't planning grants out there that we could, if we really pushed it, get funds for. But to your point, Director Palmer, if we get a real project description of this, and this, and this, I think we can get more support from the state by getting a project manager assigned. The other piece that we talked about at that time was, and I don't know how it's going to work, with all the changes at the federal level, but I'm assuming the state's going to follow the same process. They set kind of a legislative agenda for themselves. So they're probably working right now on 26, 27. And so that project manager can also help us influence what's on that so that there's funding. So, the conversation I was having with them at the time was there was a lot of money for disadvantaged communities. There's a lot of money for big redos, but we fell into a gap, kind of, meaning a very small community that's trying to do a local solution that wasn't disadvantaged. And obviously, we all know the struggles with that, right? A $200,000 a year budget doesn't get you very far. So at the time, she was saying, well, when you guys have a project and you're a little closer, we can work on that future legislative agenda to maybe carve out a little piece for groups like yours, because she was saying at the time, let me tell you, that you're not the only one in that falls into that gap, that you're not big and you're not disadvantaged, but you're trying to fix something. She said many of them are already existing plans or projects. You guys are brand new, which would make you a little bit unique. So when we get that project description, I think the very next step as far as this group is concerned is to figure out how we get into that project management loop and get into the future legislative agenda for water boards and others at the state level. But that'll recognize this sort of a project. Because that's how funding gets done, right? Say, yes, we want to fund that sort of thing, and then it's available.
So what work can this committee be doing pre-project description, or pre-project description?
So
To make sure when we need that, we're ready to run.
I might suggest it's about a 2.5 hour presentation that they did. I can send you the link to it because they recorded it from October or November. I'd suggest you both listen to, watch that, and if there's something in there that strikes you.
Is that a YouTube video?
It's either YouTube or on the state website. I'll dig it out. They sent me a link to it. I don't remember where they save it, but yeah.
I ask is one nice thing about YouTube is you can increase the speed and you can cover the material in a lot faster time. It's just
you don't care if they're talking like Mickey Mouse a little bit.
Yeah, I just want the information.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting to me. Let me slow back to normal speed.
And then you go back and slow down and
So I'm going to take a sort of direction to staff here, if I can paraphrase what I've heard.
Yes.
One, to get you some semblance of what Director Kennedy was working on, this spreadsheety thing, and two, a link to the funding fair information from, again, I think it's October, maybe you can.
And then in the realm of sharing the work, maybe one of us tries to set up a meeting with the senator's office and just touch base, and maybe the other one does the water board, and I don't care which are, we can have those meetings together as well. Mr. Savage, is there any reason why we couldn't do that together?
No, it's two.
Yeah.
As the subcommittee,
Not as a subcommittee, it's two directors.
I'll probably want to check with council.
Check
just
with
to make sure we're
council,
not. But yeah, we did just meet with the water board this week,
Okay.
to talk about the project, but not specifically about grants. Meaning,
Yeah, the thing
director.
I'm thinking on to that end, and I think I know the answer is, I'm just thinking, is there any sense of urgency? There's always urgency to our work, right? My sense is, what I'm thinking is there a window that we're gonna miss in this year? Is there a bottleneck? I'm sure there are options, I'm sure there is. If we don't have a decision until maybe June. But I don't, it doesn't, I mean, we can't rush the community process.
Well, and then if you recently met with the water board, then there's no harm in engaging the loans office.
Even just an update, and maybe even just an update and let them know what will be coming with your project description, even if it's writing, I don't know. I just, have we engaged her at all?
I haven't.
Yeah, not officially.
Her staff was attending
Yeah.
our meetings way back when.
Yeah,
if you remember.
right.
Not in a while, and not officially. It's been more just one-off.
When is her term?
Don't know.
And is her office on our updates?
Should be. I'd have to go back and look. The good thing about or the bad thing, depending upon your view, is once you get on the email list, right, you never get off unless you text me and say, hey, take, or email me and say, take me off.
Okay, any public comment on the development of a grant plan? Subcommittee member comments or informational, is there anything informational on you? Subcommittee member comments?
Well, I don't really have, any comments, I'm just thinking, I might just give Senator Moore's office a call myself and just, would it be appropriate to ask them to attend a future grant meeting? To do that too. Of course, it's harder, a little harder to do it that way, because you kind of have to accommodate their schedule to some extent. Well, I may comment, I may contact the office and just say, what's the best way to get you engaged here and see what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a heads up, right? We're moving toward a decision, we're gonna be seeking funding, and it's, yeah, I have no additional comments. All right.
I'll move adjournment at 8:28.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
For those who are online, if you want to join us for the technical committee, it'll start at 9 o'clock. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.